The gunshot exploded so close to her head that dirt sprayed across her face. Sarah Mitchell pressed herself deeper into the mud as Tyler Brooks planted his boot between her shoulder blades. "Stay down where you belong," he shouted over the laughter of his crew. "This is a man's world, sweetheart. You're just embarrassing yourself." She didn't move, didn't speak, just lay there in the cold Virginia mud while 5 of the best shooters in the military academy stood over her like she was nothing. Derek Walsh, the head instructor, walked over with his clipboard. He looked down at her small frame and shook his head. 90 pounds? Really? He turned to Brooks. "Get her off my range before someone gets hurt for real." The other students were already placing bets. "I give her 2 hours before she quits." "No way. She'll cry first." "That's an easy $20. Sarah's fingers trembled as they gripped the rifle someone had damaged. The barrel was bent just slightly, but enough to make hitting any target almost impossible. When Brooks yanked the weapon from her hands and threw it in the dirt, she finally looked up. For just a second, something flickered in her eyes, something that didn't match the scared recruit act. But it was gone before anyone noticed. 47 minutes from now, everything would flip upside down. But right now, nobody at Camp Lejeune knew they were training next to someone who shouldn't even be alive. Dawn had broken 3 hours earlier in the barracks. Sarah woke before her alarm, her body trained by years of something she couldn't talk about. She folded her thin blanket with perfect corners while the other 3 women in her unit still slept. They'd barely survived yesterday's fitness test. Sarah dressed in silence, pulling on her worn uniform. Moonlight caught a long white scar running down her right arm. Her fingers traced it without thinking. A flash of memory hit her. Sand. Blood. Someone screaming coordinates. The crack of a rifle. She shook her head hard and finished dressing. At the mess hall, she sat alone in the corner, back against the wall, eyes watching every door. The coffee tasted like dirt and the eggs were worse, but she ate anyway. That's when Brooks and his elite squad made their entrance. Tyler Brooks was built like a tank, 6'4" of pure muscle and attitude. Behind him came Jake Harrison, Tommy Chin spinning a knife between his fingers, Rico Martinez, and Brad Stevens, who seemed quieter than the rest. They owned the center table, filling the room with stories about impossible shots and confirmed kills. Elena Rodriguez, another female candidate, tried to sit near Sarah. "Don't even think about it," Brooks cut her off. "Losers sit alone. Winners sit with winners." Elena backed away, shooting Sarah an apologetic look. Sarah kept eating, but she saw Brooks coming from the corner of her eye. He loomed over her table, blocking the light. "Look what we got here." "You lost, honey. Mall's that way." She glanced up briefly, then back at her food. Something about that look made Brooks pause. It wasn't fear. It was nothing, like looking at a wall. "Hey, I'm talking to you." He slammed his hand on the table, making her juice cup jump. Sarah didn't flinch. She just reached out, steadied the cup, and took another bite. The disrespect made Brooks furious. "You deaf and dumb?" He grabbed her tray and flipped it. Eggs and coffee splashed all over her uniform. The mess hall erupted with laughter and clapping. Sarah sat still for exactly 3 seconds. Then she stood up, picked up the tray, and walked to the cleanup station. No rush, no anger, just like a robot following orders. But as she passed their table, Sergeant Blake, watching from the doorway, noticed something weird. Her eyes had automatically calculated angles from her seat to every window, like she was planning shots. Muscle memory. At 5:30, 43 candidates walked to the shooting range in the morning darkness. Instructor Derek Walsh led them, his voice carrying over the group. "Today you shoot 1,000 yards with 15-knot crosswinds," he announced. "Half of you won't make it past lunch. The other half will wish you hadn't." Brooks deliberately shoulder-checked Sarah, sending her stumbling sideways. His coffee cup tipped over, splashing all over her range bag. "Oops, Butterfingers," he laughed. More laughter from his squad. Sarah caught her balance and kept walking. She didn't try to shake the coffee out. She just tilted the bag slightly, letting it drain from one corner. Her face showed nothing. Blake noticed she walked too quietly for someone who'd never done this before. Her feet rolled heel to toe, making almost no sound on the gravel path. Something about it bothered him, but he couldn't figure out what. At 6 o'clock, they reached the range for equipment check-in. Master Sergeant Cooper handed out rifles with all the enthusiasm of someone handing out detention slips. Brooks and his elite squad got brand new Remington 700s with expensive scopes. Sarah got rifle number 13, a Barrett M82 that looked like it had survived 3 wars. Barrels got somewhere, Cooper said, which really meant good luck hitting anything. Scope might need adjustment too. Her ammunition was even worse. Match-grade bullets, sure, but from 3 different boxes with different powder loads. Any real shooter would know this meant she'd have to adjust constantly between shots. Nearly impossible to stay accurate. Station 13, Walsh announced with barely hidden pleasure. Far right, the worst spot on the entire range. Sun would blast her face by noon. Crosswinds got amplified by a gap in the barriers. A concrete wall would trap all her gun smoke, creating a personal gas cloud with every shot. Sarah accepted it all without a word. She carried her beat-up rifle to the station and started setting up. That's when the first strange thing happened. Despite the sabotaged equipment, she began sorting each bullet by weight, using just her hands to feel the tiny differences. Elena at Station 12 watched in fascination as Sarah arranged them in a specific order. "Hey, Princess," Brooks called out. "Nail salons that way. Maybe they can fix those broke fingernails while you're at it." More laughter rippled through the candidates. The warm-up started at 100 yards. Child's play for anyone who knew what they were doing. Brooks went first, naturally. He made a big show of his setup, adjusting his scope loud enough for everyone to hear him breathe. 10 shots, 10 perfect hits. He stood up with his arms raised like a boxing champion. "That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. Elite squad representing. High fives all around." Walsh nodded his approval. Sarah's turn. She took 3 full minutes fiddling with her ancient scope while people snickered and made comments. When she finally fired, the results looked like everyone expected. 7 hits out of 10, scattered all over the target. Brooks pumped his fist, but Blake frowned and pulled out his spotting scope for a closer look. The 7 hits weren't scattered at all. They'd all gone through the exact same hole, just slightly off-center. The 3 misses had gone completely wild, way off target. He walked downrange during the ceasefire to check. "I'll be damned," he muttered. The 3 missed shots showed the bullets had tumbled in flight. Bad ammunition, not bad shooting. And somehow she'd figured out which rounds were defective and grouped them at the end. By 7 o'clock, they'd moved to 500 yards. Wind had picked up to 20 knots with crazy gusts. This was where you could spot the real talent. Brooks made sure his squad talked loudly whenever Sarah was shooting. "So I told the guy, you can run, but you'll just die tired." Jake's story carried clearly across the range. 1 shot, 900 meters. Dude's head just exploded. Sarah was about to squeeze the trigger when Walsh accidentally kicked her rifle. "Oops, sorry, recruit. Must be contagious." The rifle jerked, her shot went wild, and she had to start her entire breathing cycle over. 5 minutes gone. 9 shots left. 8 minutes on the clock. 6 o'clock that evening, Sarah walked into the dark woods alone for the night navigation exercise. She knew exactly where Brooks and his crew were waiting. Checkpoint 3 by the old storage building. They'd rig her night vision with dead batteries. They'd messed with her compass, so it pointed 30 degrees off. They wanted her lost, scared, and locked in that building until morning. Then they'd plant evidence in her locker and get her kicked out for cheating. Clean and simple. Sarah could have avoided them completely. Could have taken a different route, finished the course, and walked away. But that's not why she was here. She approached from exactly the direction they expected, making just enough noise to let them know she was coming. Brooks and his 3 guys emerged from the shadows like a pack of hunting dogs. Jake grabbed her arms while Rico took her rifle. Brooks grinned in the moonlight. Well, right on time, Princess. End of the line. I need to check in at the checkpoint," Sarah said calmly. "For my navigation card." "Oh, you'll check in all right." Tommy opened the rusty metal door. "Inside there. We'll let you out in the morning." "Maybe." They shoved her toward the entrance. Sarah memorized every detail about that door. The lock type, the hinges, how thick the metal was. As they pushed her inside, she caught Brooks's wrist for just a moment. 6 hours, she said quietly. "You might want to stay together tonight. All of you." What's that supposed to mean? Just friendly advice. She stepped into the pitch-black darkness willingly. The door slammed shut with a heavy clang. Outside, Brooks and his squad celebrated with high fives, already planning their story. She never showed up at our checkpoint. Must have gotten lost. The fake evidence will be found during the search. Walsh would kick her out. Problem solved. Inside the storage building, Sarah waited exactly 60 seconds in total darkness. Then she went to work. Old emergency supplies were still stored in the corner. She found wire and began fashioning lockpicks with her hands, working by touch alone. The lock was ancient, simple. Someone with the right training would know a dozen ways to beat it. She chose the quietest method. Outside, Brooks was setting up their alibi when the first explosion tore through the night sky. Not a training charge. Real explosives. The rattle of automatic weapons followed. AK-47s. From the base perimeter. Sector 9. The elite squad froze. This wasn't part of any training exercise. What the hell? Tommy's voice cracked with fear. More explosions lit up the darkness. Base sirens started wailing. FPCON Delta, the highest threat level. This was actually happening. Brooks's radio crackled to life with frantic orders. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. We have multiple hostiles inside the wire. They stared at each other with growing terror. They were 2 miles from the main base, unarmed except for compasses and flashlights. And they just locked their only real soldier in a building with no radio. Reports flooded the emergency channels. 15 to 18 attackers had cut through the fence, heading straight for the ammunition storage. Base security was pinned down by heavy fire. For guards were already dead. The attackers knew the patrol routes, the camera positions, the response times. Someone had given them inside information. Colonel Davidson was in the command center watching security feeds. Where are my snipers? Sir, Alpha Team is at the main range. 20 minutes out minimum. What about the navigation exercise? 43 candidates scattered across the training area. None of them armed with live ammunition. Davidson's face went white. His students were completely exposed. Back at the storage building, Jake frantically worked the lock with shaking hands. Come on, come on. She's probably passed out from fear anyway, Rico said, but his voice shook too. Gunfire echoed closer. Shut up and help me. Brooks shoved Jake aside, yanking at the metal bar. It wouldn't move. That's when they heard it. A metallic click from inside. The door swung open slowly. Sarah stepped out into the moonlight, looking completely calm. She still held her makeshift lockpick. The elite squad stared at her in shock. Where's the nearest weapons cache? She asked quietly. Her voice had dropped lower. Brooks's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he managed to croak out, What? Emergency arms room. Every training area has one. Now her voice carried command. Brooks, status report. Now, the tone triggered something automatic in him. 15 to 18 hostiles, Sector 9, moving toward the ammo depot. Security engaged, but pinned down. She was already moving through the trees, and they found themselves following without even thinking about it. Sarah led them through the pitch-black woods at a pace that should have been impossible. But she moved like darkness was her home, avoiding obstacles they couldn't see until they'd passed them. Brooks realized she wasn't using her sabotaged night vision at all. She was navigating by memory and instinct. They reached Emergency Arms Room 7, a concrete building most candidates didn't know existed. The duty sergeant started to protest, but Sarah stepped into the light and spoke. Code 77 Alpha. The sergeant's eyes went huge. He looked at her face, then at his computer screen, then back at her. Without another word, he unlocked the arms room. Sarah walked straight past all the modern rifles to one specific case in the back. Inside was a Macmillan TAC 338, serial number GS009. The elite squad watcher checked the weapon with movements so smooth they looked rehearsed 1,000 times. Jake's voice died. That's restricted to special operations only. She loaded specific ammunition, her hands moving independently while her brain calculated distances, wind speeds, and angles. Stay here, she ordered. Guard this room. Nobody gets these weapons except confirmed friendly forces. You can't go alone, Rico protested weakly. But she'd already vanished into the darkness, rifle in hand. Sarah scaled the side of Building 27 using the maintenance ladder, moving up one-handed with a rifle slung across her back. She'd climbed similar buildings in a dozen countries nobody would ever hear about. The rooftop gave her clear sight lines across Sector 9, 800 yards to where muzzle flashes marked enemy positions. Wind gusting at 25 knots from the southwest. Light rain starting to fall. She built her shooting position in 20 seconds flat. No sandbags, no bipod, just her body positioned perfectly to absorb the recoil. She found the enemy's sniper first through her scope. He was good, she had to admit. Well hidden, disciplined. He had 2 response teams pinned down. Wounded men bleeding in the open because nobody could reach them without getting shot. Sarah controlled her breathing and entered what snipers call the bubble. That space where time slowed down and everything except the target faded away. Distance, 847 yards. Wind compensation, 3.7 mils right. Rain, minimal effect at this range. Target exposed, 2 inches below helmet line. 2 inches of instantly fatal space. She fired between heartbeats. 847 yards away, the hostile sniper's head snapped sideways. He collapsed over his rifle, dead before he knew what happened. Sarah was already moving to a new position. First rule of sniper warfare: never fire twice from the same spot. The remaining attackers hadn't heard her suppressed shot, hadn't seen a muzzle flash. Their first clue something was wrong came when their sniper went silent. Sarah found the machine gun team next. They were spraying the main gate with bullets, keeping reinforcements from entering the base. The gunner felt safe behind his cover. Big mistake. 791 yards. Adjust for heat rising off the parking lot asphalt. Lead the target 2 mils for his movement pattern. The gunner was mid-burst when Sarah's round hit him center mass. He dropped like someone cut his strings. His assistant looked around wildly, trying to spot the threat. Sarah's second shot caught him as he reached for the gun. In the command center, Colonel Davidson watched through grainy security cameras. He could barely make out a lone figure on a rooftop, engaging targets with mechanical precision. "Who is that?" someone asked. Davidson pulled up the arms room access log on another screen. Emergency issue, 1927 hours. Macmillan TAC 338, serial number GS009. His hands started trembling. "Sir," his assistant prompted. "Get me General Morrison." "Priority 1, Davidson ordered. He turned to Master Sergeant Blake, who'd just arrived. "Run shot pattern analysis. 773 interval." Blake was already watching the security feed. "Sir, that's Kandahar protocol. Only one person ever used that exact rhythm." "I know," Davidson's voice was tight. "But she died 3 years ago. We had a memorial service. I gave the speech." "Sir," Blake said slowly, "we had a service, but we never actually recovered her body." Davidson watched another hostile drop to the mystery sniper. "Pull her file. Everything classified and above." Sarah had taken out 9 attackers in 11 minutes. Every shot was perfect, center mass or headshots that dropped targets instantly. She kept moving constantly, never giving away her position. The remaining hostiles were panicking now. Their radios, which Sarah monitored through an earpiece she'd taken from the first kill, were full of terrified chatter. They'd expected easy targets. Inside information had promised them success. Instead, they were being hunted by someone they couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't fight. She found their commander trying to rally his men for retreat. He was screaming into his radio, demanding extraction. 931 yards. Extreme range, even for her rifle. Wind shifting unpredictably. Rain increasing. A genuinely difficult shot. Sarah made microscopic adjustments, feeling more than thinking the solution. She entered that space where conscious thought stopped and pure instinct took over. The rifle became an extension of her will. The commander's head exploded mid-sentence, his last words lost forever. The final 3 hostiles broke formation and ran for the tree line. Sarah tracked them with clinical detachment, dropping each one before they made it to cover. 15 targets. 15 kills. Total elapsed time, 14 minutes and 23 seconds. She cleared her weapon and keyed the capture radio. Sector 9 secure. Send recovery teams now. Distant helicopters approached, the quick reaction force finally arriving. But the battle had ended. Sarah climbed down from the roof, her movements showing the first signs of real tiredness. Adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the familiar cold emptiness that followed combat. She'd almost forgotten how it felt. Brooks and his squad still stood guard at the arms room when she returned. They all snapped to attention without thinking. Brooks actually saluted before catching himself. Sarah ignored them, focusing on the duty sergeant. Weapon cleared and safe. 14 rounds expended. Serial number GS009. Returning to inventory. The sergeant looked at his computer, then at her, then back at the screen. "Ma'am, this weapon is registered to," he started. "I know exactly who it's registered to." Sarah set the rifle on the counter. "Tell Colonel Davidson I'll be in his office in 20 minutes. After I change out of these wet clothes." She turned to leave, then paused. The elite squad was staring at her with expressions mixing awe and terror. "Brooks," she said. He straightened automatically. "Report to the commander's office at 0600. Bring your entire squad." She paused deliberately, including Stevens. Then she walked out, leaving them standing there in stunned silence, finally understanding they'd spent the entire day tormenting someone who'd just saved all their lives without breaking a sweat.